No, we're doing this naturally.
Good morning, everybody. It's Friday, January 7th, 2022. And I'm actually doing a pretty good job, Jose, of writing the right date on stuff. So I'm kind of proud of myself. We want 2021 to be gone, right? So it's like, okay, good, move on, all those type of things.
Yeah.
So good morning, Jose. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. Bryan, this is the first time in, I don't know, I don't recall exactly how many years, but a lot of them, more than 10, that I have a job the first week of January.
Yeah, it's
That's an indication.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think people are ready to get going and put the things in place that they need to do.
Yeah.
And hit 2022 right, which is a great way to do things, right?
Yeah.
So if you're tuning us in for the first time, welcome everyone. This is the Food Safety Chat live stream. We go live every Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Time, which is where I'm at, and 10 a.m. Eastern, which is where Jose is at. And we go live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. And I used to be on Twitter. I went off Twitter. I've decided not to be on Twitter anymore. It's just too crazy on Twitter. It drives me insane. So we're just on those three now, which is great. We're still meeting the people and talking with who we want to talk with. And what we do here on these chats is we talk about food safety topics of what's going on in the industry and these type of things to help you develop those food safety plans out there and put things in place you need to make your business better. Because as we all know, food safety, not a point of competition. And one of the things we like to do on this is you see these, if you're new to this, we like to have fun as we come in here laughing, right? And this is interactive. This is not Jose and I lecturing at you. This is a conversation. And so we put the topic out in advance. You can sign up for the events. My assistant, Renee, is on. If you're friends with Renee, every week he will post the event, and LinkedIn's doing a better job at this now. You can actually then put the event in your calendar, and you can then be notified that this is going to happen, right? So it's something that you can plan for, which makes life a little easier. So thank you, Renee, for all you do of helping out. We appreciate that. So Duncan, good morning. Good to see you. Mohammed also, wow, from Iran. Very cool. You know what's interesting is, right, is politics aside and things like this, when you see pictures of Iran and their landscape and where Tehran is, kind of by the mountains and things like this, it's a very pretty country. And a lot of the pistachios around the world come from Iran. So there you go. That's our little bit of useless trivia for the day.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things before we jump into our topic and talk about that, and if you're a regular on the show, something that I always do is I want to jump right in and get going right away. But before we start, we have a ritual. And we would like you to join us for a drink of your favorite beverage. I prefer coffee. Jose has his tea. And do you have your flower cup today?
Well, let me tell you one thing. I'm not sure if you can see this. My daughter gave me this. Believe in your abilities.
Oh.
So I just changed my cup.
Cheers, everyone. And Renee makes a great point here. Thanks for bringing up this in the chat, Renee. Is put your questions in the chat. Interact with the other people on this live stream as well. When we see your questions, we'll throw them in there for our topic and hopefully answer those. If we do a bad job at answering it, let us know, and we'll try and give you a better answer. If it's something that's really complicated and you can't really answer that online, we have, so I'm getting better at this pointing thing. We have our emails. Jose's, see, everything's backwards. There we go. Jose's got his email.
Mine is,
there we go.
Right here.
Yep. And so Jose's got his as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank our sponsor as well. So EAS Consulting Group is our sponsor for this live stream. So I'd like to thank Dean and the team over there for that. It's greatly appreciated. And as part of that sponsorship, they really provide a wonderful way to help you kick off 2022 at a good start. And that is their training. They have some wonderful training programs. And you can go online to easconsultinggroup.com. And you can sign up for a training course when you find something that's going to help you build your skill set and that toolbox you need to be successful. And if you put Bryan in checkout in the promo code, you'll get 15% off of that training, which is pretty amazing. And have here, let's see if I can get this little ticker thing to work. There we go. Right. So if you put in Bryan, so it's Bryan with a Y, Bryan, and it's easconsultinggroup.com/training. And Renee will put that in the chat here, so everybody's got a copy of that. And we'll turn that little dude off here so it's not distracting. And then off we go. So, topic for today. So as Jose and I were preparing for this, we were, looking back at our days in industry, right? I managed quality assurance for companies for over 20 years. This is an important time of year, right? This is, the holidays, you generally, if everything goes correct, you don't have problems, is a time to kind of, gather yourself and reflect. Hopefully you're able to give your team members time off on the holidays. And then you start Q1, right? And this is a real time, Jose, and to really start looking at your food safety resolutions for 2022, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't plan, you're going to fail, right? What's that? If you plan to fail, you fail to plan, or the other way around, right?
Something like that, yes.
Like that.
And you know what, Bryan? Something that I learned many years ago about systems is that, my goodness, they are dynamic by definition. So, I mean, we're now talking about making a change, because it's a new year and we're supposed to be checking this out, because at least on an annual basis, we should be checking. But you know what? It's not just like that. We should be checking that constantly, because things are changing each and every single day.
That's a good point, right? And within this new age of information that we have, right? So we have all this stuff thrown at us on Facebook and all these things. It's the same on the regulatory side as well. Yeah. Before we got online here, we were talking about the new guidance that FDA is proposing and in the comment period now for produce and testing.
For the agricultural water.
Yes. And these things they're coming at us constantly, and you have to keep on top of these things. And that needs to be part of your resolution. So what gets measured gets done. And really, you need to think about this, right? And I think, Jose, this is something that quality professionals, food safety professionals need to think about, is that there's two realms of how you need to do things. And the first is the technical skills, right? A lot of what we end up talking about, right? So systems and testing and procedures and certifications.
Yeah.
All of these things. And those are all important, and we need those to be successful. But the other realm, the management side, the people side, is as equally, if not more, important. And I think a lot of times that gets missed. And the farther you go up in an organization, the more important it is, right? So I started off as a microbiologist, and it's been a long time since I've plated something, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in a big organization or even a small organization and you're running quality, right, you need to be able to make sure that the rest of the organization understands the messaging, what it is that you guys are working on, what you need from other departments to be successful. And that needs to be visible. I think a lot of times, Jose, in our profession, we think that things will happen. Good things will happen automatically, right? If I do my job and I work really, really hard, senior management will see that and I'll be promoted. It's not how it works.
It's about commitment with ourselves.
Yes. And being able to communicate that information, right? One of the things I used to teach my quality managers, Jose, is it doesn't matter what level you are in the organization, even the CEO. There's only so many people that report to you and so many things that you directly control. If you think about it, I think the rule is you should never, ever have more than 5 or 10 people at max reporting directly to you. You can't do that, right? You have to have an organization of reports and their reports and these type of things, because you just don't have the bandwidth to be able to effectively manage that size of people.
Of course.
And within organizations, you see the CEO, and he has his senior leadership team, right? The head of marketing, sales, operations, QA, legal, what have you. Mm-hmm. And that's his reports, right? And then they have their teams. That's the only people who report to the CEO, technically, right? So it's very important. And the reason I'm making this point is our sphere of direct control is actually pretty small. And you have to be able to work outside of that. You have to be able to go to the procurement group and say, here's what we're working on, and here's why this is important to you, right?
Yes.
And when we talk about food safety culture, right, which is what everybody's talking about nowadays, that's food safety culture, right?
Yep.
It's not locked up in QA. It's the organization. And in
Yep.
order to do that, you have to be able to effectively communicate that. And you have to have clear goals that align with the organization that fit in with the strategic and tactical setup
Yes.
to make sure that it's seen, right?
Yep.
It's important, right?
Yep.
Unfortunately, in what we do, a lot of it goes unseen because if we're doing our jobs
Yes.
well, everything goes smoothly.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Product is being produced, it's going out the door, there's no recalls, everything's under control. And senior manager's like, oh, okay, no.
Okay, everything is working.
Great. And we're here today to say that that's a mistake.
So you know what? I'm going to close this conversation, this topic. So recently, I'm trying to learn as much as possible about this culture and behaviors and people and emotional
like intelligence or
yes, emotional intelligence and regular intelligence and that time, and trying to link all of that, because you know what, Bryan, and this is something that I kind of pop up in my head just a few days ago. If you look at the definition of the FDA for the preventive controls qualified individual, is an individual that is responsible for the development and the implementation of the program. How do you implement? Well, by teaching and training other people. Really, are you going to do that without knowing behaviors, characters, if they are going to be able to learn, if they have the right background to learn whatever you are going to be teaching them and so on? No, it's not going to work like that.
Yeah. That's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
Corey had our first question for us. She wants to know if you're drinking whiskey this morning, Jose.
Oh my goodness, Corey, please. Well, let me tell you one thing for everybody that is hearing this. I just don't drink alcohol. Nothing, zero, ever in my life.
Wow.
Yes, that's amazing. I mean, I may eventually grab a little bit of a wine and drink, but I mean, one finger or something like that. That's it, basically.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's personal choice and these type of things, right? Everything has a trade-off.
In my cup, what you can see here is green tea.
Good morning to Frank in Centerview, Missouri. Thank you for joining us. And Martin, our friend Martin in lovely Phoenix, Arizona. Thanks again for joining us. So really, when you sit back and think about this, and you're in the quality group or food safety, or you're touching on what we're talking about today, you need to be thinking about your objectives for this year. And really, we wanted to focus in on the food safety side, but remember, those should not be your only goals, right? So you should have your technical goals, but also your goals around development, right? So what are you going to do this year to make yourself better at what you do? And if you have a team, you need to build that into their objectives too, right?
Yes.
Whenever I had objectives for my team, that was always a section in there, and I would have money in the budget for classes. So they could take online courses or go get certification, or to your point, PCQI, right? Go and take a course on that, on getting your certification and all those type of things. Very important. And how do you measure those, right? And what are your objectives, right? So taking that course, what are your key performance indicators? How do you communicate those within the organization? One of the things, Jose, we used to do at a company I used to work for is HR would get together all the senior leadership from the company. So all the department heads, so me and procurement and whoever, and every quarter we would get together and we would have a meeting on who our star performers were in our group. And so every team member was responsible for bringing forward one person to talk about so that the other teams could get to know them. Right. So because if you work in quality, right, and you're in corporate, most of your guys are out in the field running around, right? They're in the plants, they're suppliers, they're not interacting with the corporate people. So that was our opportunity to promote those people. And it was a wonderful program, right? And one of my team members who was there, and she was very, very good, right? And she's had a very successful career. And now she's a vice president of quality And I'm very proud of that, right? She's doing an amazing job and still at that company within that network, right? There have been acquisitions and things like that, but
Yep.
she's able to demonstrate her worth. And that's really, really important, right? So one of your main goals, right? We're focusing in here today on what some of those goals are, is preventing recalls, right? And this one's hard because it's a negative goal, right? You're stopping something from happening, right?
Oh my goodness, Brian. I mean, if I'm auditing and I see that that is one of the goals of the company, that is one of the objectives, the food safety objectives. Okay, fine. Tell me how you're going to be measuring, how you're going to be handling this issue. And I mean, yes, for me as your auditor, okay, I'm fine. But is that a really a proactive goal? No, it is not.
Yeah.
Because you are focusing on a failure. You are focusing on something that is prohibited by law. Because the law says that it is prohibited to ship a product to the market that is adulterated or misbranded with a hazard or with some sort of a filth. It doesn't matter. The product is adulterated and should not be in the market.
Mhm.
So why not setting up a goal in making sure that we're going to check all of the products before shipping them? Hey, let's set up a positive release procedure. Why not setting that as a goal?
Yeah. And then when you start thinking about these things, you can realize how you can put goals in place, right?
Yep.
So one of the requirements, and from what I've seen, Jose, and I'd be curious on your findings in the field as well, is that under FSMA, right, you have your prerequisites and your preventive controls. The PCQI is required within, 7 working days to review the prerequisite, the preventive controls, more importantly, the preventive controls,
Yes.
to make sure that they were met before it's released, right? Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be before release, but it should be before released. So for example, if I'm the PCQI and within my preventive controls in my food safety plan, let's say I have metal detection, right? I have a metal detector on the line, and that's one of my preventive controls. As the PCQI, I'm responsible for that to verify that was working correctly for that day.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
So put together a form that lists out all your preventive controls. So let's say you do allergen testing on your line before startup, and you have your metal detection and whatever your checks are. Let's say if you're a dairy plant, pasteurization, right? If your time and temperature were all met correctly. Put that together as a sign off. Now you can measure that and say, what is my rate of compliance with that? Was all the data present, right? Because a lot of times in plants, right, data lags, right?
Yep.
Is it presented in a timely manner so product can make it out and be okay, right?
Yep.
That type of information can be communicated to management. One of the problems I had in the past was I was working for a company, and the documentation that the guys were doing on the floor, terrible. They were not filling out the forms correctly, and there was missing information, and the supervisors weren't signing, and it would come back to the lab. And my lab manager was responsible for collating all of the information around quality and food safety. And then she would spend the rest of the day tracking people down to say, oh, you didn't fill this out, and you didn't fill this out. And they're like, okay, yeah, right. And what we did, I put a procedure in place with a KPI on percentage of forms that were filled out by supervisor.
Oh my goodness, that is great.
And
great idea.
Yeah. So at the time, I was running quality at this company, and once a month I would go to the meeting of the plant and I would present the compliance to filling out the forms to the plant manager by supervisor, who were all sitting there in that meeting. And then I would say, okay, hey, Henry did an amazing job. He was at 98%, just a couple of mistakes. Good job, Henry. I would go down the list. And at the bottom of the list was Jose. 60% of his documentation was incomplete. And then the plant manager, of course, you know what happened next, right? The plant manager would turn to Jose and say, what the hell is wrong with you?
Yeah.
You do this. I don't want to hear about this again. It was amazing how quickly that cleared up.
Yep. And actually, Bryan, food safety culture is about empowering people, give them the right tools so they do the right job, and then expect accountability. They are responsible for their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're responsible.
we have a comment, Brian, that says, I cannot see the name. It says LinkedIn user, but it says, although you should not plan for disaster, if you don't consider it as a possibility, then you will be a loss if a catastrophe. I agree with you 100%. We need a RICO program. I'm not concerned about that. I'm not questioning that. Actually, I'm the one that proposes practicing that many times throughout the year. And if it's me, I will recommend a monthly traceability exercise and checking at least every 2 months the checklist and everything that is being done through a recall. By default, according to the FDA, not with GFSI, according to the FDA, the RICO program is considered a preventive control.
Yes.
So if you identified hazards in your hazard analysis, it is mandatory to set up a RICO program. I'm not questioning that. But if you go and apply the root cause analysis and the root cause approach to the problem, what you do not want is a recall, because that is a prohibited act. And now that is going to make us criminals, because the food laws carry criminal liability.
Yeah. Well,
in order to prevent that, what we need to do is to focus on the thing that will cause the recall as one of the key process indicators or so on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so I'll even plus your response there on, testing the system, right? So keep in mind that the traceability exercises are a subcomponent, right? That's one exercise if you have a recall that needs to be successful. But there's all kinds of other elements too, right? And I generally break up recalls into two main areas. You need a procedure on how do you decide if you need to recall?
Yeah.
And a lot of times companies will just jump the gun, right? So a sales guy will say, oh my God, we have a problem, we need to recall. And then they start recalling, and then they figure out that it wasn't really a problem. Well, too late. Too late. Too late.
And you know what, Brian? Let me tell you another point of view. So about, I'm going to say 2 or 3 years ago, I was in a meeting with a company, with a client, blah, blah, blah. And we were talking, and marketing and salespeople were there. And during the conversation, you know what showed up? That for salespeople, it was horrible to call their clients and tell them, hey, I need to recall this product. Of course, it's horrible. But you know what? We need to do it.
Right. Well, and on that point too, and I learned this from very painful personal experience or issues I went through, is if you don't involve people, they will make up their own version of what's going on. Right. So if the salespeople are not involved in the recall crisis management process, and that salesperson gets a call from a buyer at a grocery store saying, "Hey, what's going on here? What's up?" That salesperson isn't going to say, "I don't know." They're going to make something up.
Yep. And you know what? Again, going back to the root cause of everything, food safety culture, communications plan.
Yep. So you need to measure these things, which is our point of our conversation today.
Yes.
And for me, a great example of this is OSHA, right? So OSHA has this concept of near misses. So OSHA just doesn't say, oh, I want to know how many people were killed due to workplace accidents. No, they want to know near misses. So if somebody's driving a forklift like an idiot and they go screaming around a corner and they almost hit somebody who's walking there, that is a near miss, and that needs to be reported because near misses add up. And if you have a bunch of near misses, that means you're probably going to have a more serious issue, right? An injury or worse. And that's a good way to look at things, right? That's a measurable thing to prevent what you want from happening, right? We don't want recalls. So what are those things that you're putting in place to do those? Let's take a look at our comments here. Jill, good to see. Oh, 24 below Fahrenheit in Minnesota. Welcome.
Oh, my goodness. No way. Sorry, Jill. Oh, my goodness.
Man. Raphael, we're always glad to have Raphael here. Good to see you, our friend. We can say preventing recalls, or we can say where are the opportunities to have a stronger, more reliable system? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And his follow-up point, and we'll get to Duncan here. So Jose, empowering. Brian, telling the plant manager who is not signing. Conclusion, empowering sometimes happens by kicking the B. And I think what the B is, we know what the B is. Absolutely. A lot of times, and to kind of follow up on what Raphael is saying there, right, is we run around in quality and food safety and try and cajole and beg people into doing what they should be doing, right? Please, can you do this? Oh, please, right? And people are like, okay, well, yeah, whatever. And you're not going to win with that strategy, right? That only takes away your power. So yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
Duncan said here, I've taken similar approaches in the past. Transparency and accountability work together to solve a lot of life's little problems. Oh,
yes.
Yeah. So for example, this time of year, right? If you have a New Year's resolution to lose weight, if you just hold that into yourself, it's very easy to break that, right? But if you tell everybody you know, and you go on LinkedIn and you say, my New Year's resolution is to lose 20 pounds and go to the gym 3 times a week, and I want you to hold me accountable, your chances of being successful go up much, much more, right? Because you have measures, you have metrics of how you're going to reach the objective.
But you know what, Bryan, and let me interrupt you for a second. I remember I was a speaker in a conference in Mexico in December of 2019. And in that conference, there was a lot of people from very different industries, including pharma, including psychologists, teaching classes for culture and so on, and how to improve the culture of the people. Well, so the last day of the conference, the organizer invited all of the speakers, and we had a very nice dinner all together. I was sitting right next to one of the psychologists, and he said, Jose, food safety culture cannot be implemented by force. Need to be implemented from within. So if people is not committing with themselves, there is nothing that can be done.
I agree. If you are a quality manager and you're trying to implement food safety culture on your own, you're going to fail. It's culture. It's not food safety dictatorship. It's food safety culture.
Democracy.
Right. Everybody needs to work on this together. So with this, right, and if we back up and look at this and say, okay, I need to put together some goals relative to this, and just saying not having recalls is not good enough. So how do I do this, right? And we've given a couple of ideas on this too, right? So the thing is, start with the low-hanging fruit, and you need to look at your system and say, okay, what are the leading causes of recalls? Where are other food companies messing up the most, right? And taking a look at that and looking at that data, and it's surprisingly consistent, right? You're getting into statistics here, right? You have lots of companies, lots of outcomes, lots of data points, and we see year over year consistency in these areas. And it's always 3 areas, Jose: allergen control, pathogen control, and foreign material. Right? If you can get those 3 under control, you're looking beautiful, right?
Look at these, Bryan. Now that you mentioned those 3 areas, 100% with you. Now let's link, and this is something that I just realized. It came up to my mind right away. Let's link that comment with the outcome of the inspections of the FDA since 2016. Because since 2016, which is the data that I have, it is very likely that it's going to be exactly the same before that. The reason number 1 for the FDA raising a violation of the regulation is because of a GMP, not a food safety plan. So does that mean that the GMPs are not working, or that the food safety plan is not working for the allergens, the biological hazards, or whatever? Good point.
It's a good point.
And every single person at every single, quality control position should be aware of these statistics, and then start analyzing their own program according to, who's controlling the metal, the foreign material inclusion, who's controlling biological hazards, and who's controlling the allergen labeling and the prevention of cross contact. How we're controlling that. Is that controlled by a GMP, or is that controlled by the food safety plan? That's a good point.
Right. It is.
Because you may have many different companies that are controlling with one or the other, but in any case, it's not working.
Right. And then FDA comes in and points that out and says, and it gets back to the comment that you're very good at making on these, right? Because it always comes back to the regulations, right? FDA has two main tools in their toolbox, right? Adulteration and misbranding.
and misbranding. Both of them are prohibited acts.
Right. And that gets back to Kirsten's comment here. Sorry. Reading FDA warning letters can be pretty eye-opening.
Oh, yeah. I agree 100% with you.
Every single week when I go and check those out and I'm online and I put this on LinkedIn, right? Every single week, somebody messes up their foreign supplier verification program.
Yes.
Or they don't even have one.
Or they don't even have one. Oh, well, what was that last year? We in one of our chats, Bryan, we discussed, and I believe I mentioned this, that this last year was the first year in my life that I helped 4 people with warning letters in 1 year. First time in my life.
Yeah. And I learned as well too here recently, and I think this may have been from you, that FDA is doing a lot of the FSVP inspections remotely. Yes.
Remotely, 100% is part of the regulation. The regulation was designed like that.
Yep.
And they recently opened a portal online. So FSVP importers, they will have their own docket. So they can upload the documentation when the FDA is asking them, hey, I need to see this and this and this and this. Upload that.
Yep. And FSVP is essentially a mini version of your overall food safety plan, right? All the things that you need to be worried about are there. So how do you break these things up and start looking at these, Jose, in terms of KPIs? Let's look at allergens first, right? And how do you do that, right? So really, if you look at it and you say, okay, well, how do allergens impact my operations? So suppliers, right? We've seen huge recalls recently, flour, right? Just gigantic recalls around suppliers. Labeling, right? Corporate develops a new label, misses the allergen statement, and out it goes, right? Recall, right? How are those being controlled? Changeovers in plants, right? That's a huge cause, right? There's a little bit of film or packaging left in a machine and you switch over and 2 or 3 packages get in a box that shouldn't be there. Cleaning verification. So what are you doing when you clean to make sure that it's really clean, right? So we go through the validation for the cleaning, but what are you doing to verify that, right? And there's all kinds of different approaches to that. So within those, I mean, you can look at these programs and then start building out KPIs. So let's say that for your supplier allergen control, you say that our goal is to have 5 audits of supplier allergen documentation, and you identify some of your riskiest ingredients because you should be sending out allergen questionnaires to your suppliers and saying, hey, do you have any allergens that you're sending to us? Do you have other allergens in your plant? What are you guys doing to get ready for sesame? These type of things, right? Yeah. Starting to look at those programs and reviewing those. You can put a KPI in place around that.
And if it's a very high risk for any company, you should be performing your own on-site audit on that supplier.
Right. Exactly. Let's see. Duncan had a comment here I wanted to get to as well as we're diving into this. One of my favorite anecdotes is from working at a site where internal audit non-conformances were accumulating rather than being closed out. We ended up raising a non-conformance against senior management commitment, and we assigned responsibility to the management, the MD personally. That non-conformance was then publicly reviewed in a monthly quality meeting along with all the others. That degree of transparency and accountability at all seniority tiers is something really powerful. Bam.
Very good.
Bam. Oof. Good for you. That takes some gut.
Very powerful. Yeah.
Right. And it gets back. I mean, so part of this comment, right? And we've been talking about this, and I want to really kind of bring it to the surface as we're going through these KPIs. This is a system you build, right?
Yeah.
And it really needs to start from the top, right? Senior management needs to talk food safety.
Yes.
The CEO needs to publicly say, and that was a great comment, Duncan, thank you, is here at our company, we are 100% about food safety. Nothing will ever leave our company that is not safe. If you as an employee of this company see anything that is not safe, it is your moral responsibility to tell someone. If they won't listen to you, tell me. I want to know. Everyone on my staff is measured against this too. And you need to start building out food safety into the organization, right? So how does procurement impact food safety? Huge, right? Huge. If they buy substandard materials because they're cheap that have a high food safety risk, that impacts everybody, right? That needs to be in their objectives and their bonus, right? You need to do that.
Yes.
Everybody, right? Receiving, so procurement, operations, legal, quality, R&D, marketing, anybody who touches the product needs to have that in there, and that needs to come from the top. Right? And that gets back to the very good comment you made earlier, Jose, which is if you try and drive this from the bottom up, not going to work.
Yeah, it's about commitment. And you know what, Brian? In order to support your comments, okay. So look at this. Let's say that we are PCQIs. I'm going to assume that all of us are PCQIs. Then our responsibility, is to develop a, food safety plan. Hold on. Our responsibility is to develop and implement a food safety system. So now the FDA is talking ISO. Okay, so what is a system? Okay, let me go back.
Yeah.
A system is when we grab all of the requirements, fully understand what is required, develop control procedures for those requirements, and develop verification procedures for the controls that we created. If that works, we are not going to have a failure. That failure is a deviation that could potentially become a recall. So if we have a recall, that means that our system was not properly designed, documented, or during the implementation phase, which is a training and the culture and whatever, we failed and something is not working there.
Right.
So as soon as, like you said, for KPIs, what we need to look is into our weaknesses and take a proactive approach. And that means that all of our corrections and corrective actions and potential and the near misses that you mentioned, those near misses are, crazy important.
Yes.
They need to be evaluated. And this is something that, for example, I'm going to use the metal detector, Brian. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people say, if the metal detector is kicking something out, we're fine. No, you are not fine. Because that the kicking of the metal detector is an indication that you have metal, potentially, not 100% sure, but you have metal in the food, and metal is not food, so cannot be together. That is considered foreign matter. Your products are adulterated. When the metal detector kicks something out, you have a huge deviation in your system.
Exactly. Yeah. So that metal detector, every time it's kicking a product off, it is saying, got a problem.
You got a problem. You got a problem. Yeah,
Right?
hold on. Let me change the language. You got adulteration. You're going to have a recall. The FDA is going to come and it's going to shut you down. We have to watch out. That's exactly what is indicating the metal detector.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really cool. I saw on metal detectors, and so technology is advancing on these things really fast, right? So I saw a plant where they had installed chart recorders on their metal detectors.
That's a great idea.
Right. So you could visually see on that chart recorder
the spike.
And you could make sure that the operators were doing their, let's say, hourly checks with their positive controls, their samples, and you could see if there was anything else on there. And as a PCQI, that's something that you can sign really easily.
Yep.
Right? Everything was under control that day. Gotta love it. So part of this too, right, is KPIs, right? Yeah. As you're listening to Jose and I talk, think to yourself, what KPI can I put in place what they're discussing, right? So we just identified one right there, right? So metal detector kickoffs.
Okay, so look, Kirsten just typed something on the sound like a preventive maintenance KPI. Great. That's a great idea.
Yep, why not?
Yeah.
And so part of this too, right, is then looking at your system. And this is where fresh eyes always help. So for example, there was a company I worked with in the past that had a beautiful metal detector system and things were being kicked off. And they had a little tray that the product would get kicked off into. Well, QA was supposed to go by and pick those samples up, right? And then figure out what happened, right? Everything that we're talking about. Well, they had a shift change. And a new operator came by and said, oh, look at this product is sitting over here. Why is this here? And he put it back on the line.
Oh, lack of training. That is a root cause.
Right. So they didn't have like a secure lockbox, right? Where it got kicked in there with warning labels all over the outside and no way for people to get to it, right? They had an easy, accessible system.
Brian, I agree with you. I don't have any problem with that secure box. But you know what? If you properly train all of the individuals in that area, they will never touch anything that is in that box because they know that that product could be adulterated.
Exactly.
It's about training. It's about the culture.
Right. So now we've identified a KPI that you can look at, right? There's a million different ways that you can measure that. Here's the interesting thing on foreign material, Jose, is more than half of foreign material complaints are not metal.
Yep. Yep. So is there out there a plastic detector? No, because plastic is number one right now.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. Like Kirsten was saying, well, that is most likely a responsibility of the maintenance guys, making sure that they identified which are the different materials that could be added, foreign matter, by the way, added to the product during production, identify the equipment, and then perform very frequent maintenance activities, preventive maintenance activities, and those are the KPIs that Kirsten is talking about, and then have inspections of the equipment during the production time. Those are very wonderful controls for preventing the inclusion of foreign matter, which is exactly what is required by the FDA in the regulation.
Yep. So one of the things that when I work with my clients that we do is we put in startup checklists of what are all of the things in this process that can potentially fall in the product. And one of the ones, I'm sure you see this all the time too, is we put machine guards around machines, right? We want to protect our people. Yeah. But they have to go in there and work inside and do stuff all the time, right? So those doors are always being opened and closed and things like that. And most of the time they're made out of plexiglass, Lexan things, which are cracked.
Yeah.
Right? And how many times has an auditor come through and said, "Oh, this shield is cracked"? Right, number one, how do you clean that?
Yeah.
And then if there's a piece missing, where's that piece?
Yep.
Where is it?
When it was missing? That's the first question that I'm going to be asking.
Right. And then the operator's like, I don't know, that's been broken for 3 months at least. Right.
I don't recall when it was broken. Oh my
goodness. Right. And if it's a vulnerable part in the process, right, where people are slamming it down, right, and then the maintenance guys are getting upset because that gets damaged all the time. And they're like, all right, I'm done changing that. Those guys don't take care of the equipment. So if you have a startup checklist to make sure that everything is in place before you start, that's a KPI.
Yep. I agree.
Yep.
So for allergens, Bryan.
Yes.
Ways that our products could be adulterated. 2 ways. One is cross contact, and the second one is not proper labeling. So when developing KPIs, our focus should be on, number one, making sure that we are preventing the cross contact, and another KPI for setting up the proper labeling. Mm-hmm. So look at this. When I'm teaching the preventive control for human food, there is a slide there that says that 26% of all of the recalls, and most likely this is between 2009 and 13. I believe that is the lapse of time that the FDA was using for that specific statistic. 26% of the recalls is because the product don't have the right label. Mm-hmm. Okay, so between you and me right now, as a summary, what is the process for putting the product in the right box, the right bag, or putting the product in the container and then attaching the right label? Right. Well, someone will need to go to the warehouse, grab the right box, the right bag, or the right sticker, or the right label, I'm going to say, and bring it back to production. In production, the guy that is responsible for the machine is going to say, okay, let me load the machine. The person that is going to the warehouse, that person must be trained, and that person should have a guidance that is specific for the label or the box or the bag that he or she is going to pick up. Mm-hmm. So, question, why people are not using some kind of a guidance during the processing of the equipment? Like, oh, right now we are processing product A, and you hang the specification of that product. And then when you are going to ask the person to go to the warehouse and pick up something, hey, take a copy, because over here we have a copy of the label that is going to be used for this product. Oh my goodness, you do that, and the likelihood that this person is going to pick up something strange is, you are reducing that likelihood. Yeah. When that thing comes back, and the person that is responsible for loading the machine or start putting the stickers or the product inside the bags or the boxes,
Yeah.
that person should be checking that they have the right sticker according to the specification.
Mhm.
And both of those most likely are going to be controls in a system.
Yeah.
Now, what we need to do is to verify those controls. How do you verify the controls? Well, very simple. Every hour, and I'm going to make this an hourly check. Every hour, someone is going to pull one product from the line and make sure that that person compares the product to the specification of the product that is being produced at that point.
Mhm.
That is something that I have not seen most of the time in my life when I'm consulting.
Yes.
So people are controlling and not verifying. And in the case of the metal detector, people is verifying and not controlling reading. So it is clear that people don't understand what is a system.
Right. Well, and your example is perfect. I mean, now think about this too, is a lot of times product changeovers on those lines don't align with shift changes.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So now I come in on a new shift and there's stuff running from the previous shift. Is it right? When you start up, you now have responsibility for that. Is this correct? I need to sign off and check on this, right? That's a KPI. And let's say, for example, that I come on for the new shift as that operator and I'm getting ready to change over. And there's a couple of pieces of film still in the machine from the previous run that are wrong. And they're a different allergen. And I pull those out. That's a near miss.
Yes.
That needs to be recorded. That's a KPI.
Yep. Yep. I agree 100% with you. But I mean, the fixes are so simple, Bryan, because that is it. The thing, this is not complicated. This is very simple. It's just understanding systems and make sure that your food safety program, your food safety system works according exactly to the structure of a system.
Yep. And so we're getting short on time here, but I definitely want to make sure that we touch on the third category. We've been talking about allergens. We've been talking about foreign material. Let's talk a little bit about pathogens, right? So that's the other main recall category. And every year it's Listeria and Salmonella at the top of the list, right?
Okay.
So your environmental monitoring program, we mentioned this earlier, right? And under FSMA, if you're a ready-to-eat facility, you have to have an environmental monitoring program, period.
Yes. No, but hold on, Bryan. Yeah, I mean, of course, yes. You are 100% right there. Anyone that is producing a ready-to-eat product exposed to the environment before packaging, they must implement an environmental monitoring program. Okay, fine. But let's say, and I was teaching a class to a company producing meat and poultry. I just finished yesterday. And because it's meat and poultry, I was teaching a HACCP class. Not preventive control because it's not the regulation applicable to them.
Right.
Regulation applicable to them is 9 CFR 417, the HACCP, and 416 is the GNPs. In FDA, depending on your product and your process, it's going to be other different regulations according to Title 21, which is the one that is for FDA. Now, so when I was teaching this, I said, is there any of your products that is ready to eat? And they say, no, all of the products are raw. Do you have cooking instructions in your products? And they say, yes, we do. All of the products have cooking instructions. They were validated by us. And I said, great. So do you need an environmental monitoring program? And I said, well, by regulation, you don't need it. But if it's me, I will set up an environmental monitoring program. Why? This is very simple. How do you clean your facility? Do you use water? Oh, yes, Jose, we use a lot of water. Well, let me tell you one thing that should not be news. You have listeria in your facility. Period. Because listeria do not make any difference. Listeria is not arriving to a ready-to-eat facility and say, hey, guys, are you ready to eat? Yes, we are. Okay, let me set up here. No, you're not doing this. Anytime that you have water, you have listeria in your environment. Period. Now, look at this. Okay, the meat, fine. The meat is raw and it's going to be cooked. Fine. Can you allow listeria to end up in that product even though that is going to be cooked? No. If you allow that, your products are adulterated because you are working under insanitary conditions, which is exactly what is prohibited by law.
Exactly. Right. So to circle back, you and I are 100% aligned. The regulations say in that category for ready to eat, you need to have it. But should everybody have an environmental monitoring program?
Yes.
Yeah, you should.
Yes.
Right? And FDA is looking in that really closely, right? So you need to demonstrate. And guess what? That's a KPI, right? And if you If you have zone 4 hits, that's a near miss, right?
Yes.
And as you get closer and closer to the product, you need to be aware of that. And right, as a side note here, we've done a whole show on this, right? But it's worth mentioning again is FDA has modified their tactics for this, and if they are coming in and doing what we call a swabathon, or they're looking very closely at data, they're going to focus on zone 1, food contact, and zone 2, indirect food contact surfaces.
Yes.
You need to understand that, and you need to look at that too.
Yeah, because if you are not testing zone 1 and 2, guess what? The FDA is going to give you the surprise. Hey, guys, you are not properly cleaning this.
And you have no defense. No defense, right? So forever in the food industry, right? And I was part of this too. And I have modified my approach with my clients for this, right? Yes. It's been this, right?
Yep.
If I don't test for Listeria in zone 1 and zone 2, it's not there. La, 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 la.
Yeah.
Right? So that's not good. You need to be aware of that. The other big point and around the pathogen control too is this is a big one that I see from my clients too, and I'll be curious to see what you say, Jose, is that you do your food safety plan and you do your hazard analysis and you identify hazards that need to be controlled. And let's say, for example, salmonella in chocolate, right? And you've identified this as a threat for your incoming material. Okay, great. Who's controlling that? Are you controlling that hazard, or is a supplier controlling that hazard? Let's say that you're making a granola bar with chocolate chips and there's no kill step, right? You're just making a cold pressed bar. Your supplier is controlling that hazard.
Yes.
And your COA and your systems for supplier evaluation need to show that, right?
Yes.
When FDA comes in, they're going to ask that question 100%. They're going to say, okay, you've identified salmonella as a hazard in chocolate. Show us how it's being controlled.
Yep.
And if it doesn't match, you're
done.
And you also need to understand too, right? So we'll get a little micro on this side too. What testing methodology are they using? What sampling are they using? If you find out that they're testing a 25-gram sample over the course of an entire year of production, worthless.
Of course. The sample is not enough.
No, you don't have enough visibility, right? Micro is a tricky thing, right? It's based on samples, and micro is clumpy, as I call it, right? It's not homogeneous through the product. It grew here and it grew here, and you got a little bit here, right? Which means statistically you have to look at more if you're hoping to see it. So you need to understand that, right? And that's a KPI. Compliance to specifications for food safety, right? Are you getting COAs? Are you auditing the suppliers? How are they doing? All these you can measure those things, right? And to bring all of this home, this information is not something, if you're the food safety manager, that you're hiding under your bushel basket, right? And you're keeping this information to yourself. If you're going to be successful in developing a robust food safety plan that protects the public and your brands, the organization needs to understand that, right?
Yes.
So back to our OSHA near miss example, right? Here are all the KPIs for the leading causes of recalls, for pathogens, for suppliers, for foreign material, all of these things, right? Here's how we're controlling these, and the result of all of our hard work is we're not having recalls.
Yes. Perfect.
And now senior management goes, oh, wow, that's a ton of work. Good job.
Yes.
Good job, team.
Yeah. That's a good job that is going to prevent committing a crime, which is shipping product to the market that is adulterated or misbranded.
Right.
I will do it.
Absolutely.
I prefer to do that job instead of being in jail.
Right. So hopefully, guys, we've done a good job here today of giving you some ideas, right? Every business is unique, every company is unique, every product, but there's commonalities, right? And we're trying to get to those commonalities here today. So your assignment today is to go back and look at your food safety plan and look at your operations and look at your KPIs and say, in 2022, how can I put forward measurable items that I can manage and communicate in the organization that's being done, right? We're not talking the technical side of your work now. We're talking the people side of your work, right? Yeah. Building out the persuasion and the communication and the elevation of why food safety is so important. And that's food safety culture, right?
Yep. Exactly right.
So amazing. This is a great start to our food safety chats here this year. Thank you, everyone. Amazing. Great feedback, right? So Duncan, I'm sorry, I didn't read your comment here yet. The MD locked reject box is also a point of vulnerability to malicious contamination.
Oh,
Yep.
yes. Oh,
Right.
yes.
Right. And that's why all these systems are locked together, right? Food defense is part of your plan.
Yeah.
Right. So
Bryan, one topic that goes a little bit outside because we're kind of running out of time. Is it today or the next Friday, the first chapter of the food safety chat last year?
so what, like
Because,
for our year
because
anniversary?
yes, because it was in January when we started the first one. Is that right?
No, October.
Really?
Yes.
But October of 2020.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I was confused. I thought that it was January. Okay.
Right. So again, guys, right. So we've covered a ton of topics here, and Jose and I are here to help. EAS, our sponsor here, is here to help you with your training. If you have any questions, we're all in this together, right? Food safety is not a point of competition, and we love sharing this information, which is why we do this every week, right? Our emails are on here. Reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions, right? If you have something more detailed that you need to talk about offline, we'd love to do that, right? So please reach out to us. Again, we do this food safety chat every Friday. So we will be back here next Friday, the 14th, at the same time, so 8 a.m. Mountain, 10 a.m. Eastern, and we will talk about all things food safety. And we're going to have an amazing year, and you guys are going to put together amazing programs. And it's just going to be off the hook, right? It's got to be better than 2021, right? So we're off to a good start, and we appreciate everyone. Thank you, Kirsten, for your nice comments here. We appreciate that. So we'll see everybody back here next week. And don't forget, Renee, my assistant here, he's on LinkedIn, right? So Renee Boza, Oboza, friend him, and then you can get updates on these food safety chats so you never forget. Yeah. So Jose, an amazing show as usual. Thank you, my friend.
Has been a pleasure, my friend. Happy New Year to everyone.
Yes, Happy New Year, everyone. And we will see everyone back here next Friday. So
next Friday.
Have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves, and we'll see you then.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.